My name is Greg Beaker, and if you're a Kansas resident, a deer hunter, an outfitter, a landowner, a business owner, or a wildlife officer in Kansas, I'd encourage you to take a few minutes today and watch this video. The topic I'm going to discuss directly impacts you. Yesterday, the KDWP hosted a meeting encouraging the ban of supplemental feeding of wildlife in Kansas. To be clear, unlike Missouri, Nebraska, and Oklahoma, this is a full ban. No mineral sites, no feeding outside of seasons, nothing. Their reasoning in non-definitive terms was this could potentially, or this could lead to a reduction in disease transmission among wildlife in Kansas. In more definitive terms, I'd like to start this video with a fact. When studying the history of CWD cases in states that have banned feeding, CWD cases continue to rise year over year and expand across more counties within states like Colorado, who banned feeding clear back in 1997. So to better understand our situation in Kansas, I asked the question to the KDWP today. Can you provide me with the number of positive CWD cases and total carcasses tested in both a unit and a percentage rate? My goal is to evaluate if the rate of CWD occurrences are rising at a lower, the same, or higher rate in Kansas versus states that have banned supplemental feeding. The response I received from a member of the KDWP Commission was, in quote, via text, no idea. So before we go any further, let's address what you might be thinking. Of course you're against banning supplemental feeding. You own a deer feed company. That's a fair statement, and I'd like to address that. I started GB Feeds just over a year ago to share products that I personally used with hunters to help them grow and harvest bigger bucks every year. But let's be clear, GB Feeds is not my primary job. I work an 8-to-5 job just like you. This is my hobby and something I enjoy doing on weekends and evenings because I like seeing other hunters be successful and have a chance at the caliber of deer that I have. Next, I want to talk about my credentials to speak on this topic. First, through GB Feeds, I get the privilege to interact with hundreds of hunters just like you and hear about their setups and strategies and get to celebrate and joy with them when they harvest a deer each year. Second, I don't lease or own a single piece of ground. I hunt public or I gain permission to access private land through landowner relationships across the state of Kansas. Third, I'm in contact with many different land agents from Whitetail Properties, Midwest Land Group, Red Cedar, Hayden Outdoors, among others, to gain a pulse on what's happening in the real estate and hunting industry. Fourth, while owning GB Feeds, I've tested over 30 different types of feed, regularly sending samples to Midwest labs in Nebraska to understand nutrition rates, consumption, and then study how those results impact digestion and deer health. And then finally, I'll spend over 100 days of field each year scouting, hunting, and shed hunting to better understand deer activity, deer health, the age structure, all in an attempt to harvest a bigger deer each year in Kansas. I cannot say that I've seen the impacts of CWD in Kansas. I'm not finding a ton of dead deer. And frankly, I feel the impacts of EHD or blue tongue, which is a disease caused by biting midges around stagnant water in drought-like conditions, to be much more prevalent than CWD in causing deer deaths. Now that I've shared my credentials to speak on the topic, I'd like to see the credentials of the commissioners in charge of making a state-altering decision for the Kansas hunting community. To the commission, are you deer hunters? Do you spend ample time in the field each year to understand deer activity? Do you test deer feeds? Do you understand deer digestive systems? Have you spent money on deer feeders, leases, trail cameras? Are you qualified to make a decision of this caliber that majorly impacts the groups I'm going to discuss below? The first group is every Kansas resident, hunter or not. Property taxes on your home and your vehicle are at an all-time high. This is meant to offset the 2024 $24.11 billion Kansas spending budget. In surveying a local co-op, I was told they sold roughly 100 pallets of corn to deer hunters last year. That amounts to $40,000 in revenue, or roughly $3,600 paid to the county and state of Kansas in sales tax. Take that number and multiply that by 3, as most counties have 3 to 4 towns in which there's a co-op. They make up 105 counties in Kansas. That's over $12 million in revenue from co-ops that employ Kansas residents just on deer feed, and $1.1 million in sales tax revenue on those deer corn sales alone. This does not account for feed companies and local retailer sales, feeder sales, blinds, and trail camera sales. Removing this revenue from the economy places the missing tax revenue burden on you, the Kansas resident. Whether you're a hunter or not, it will be your responsibility to foot the bill. The herd manager. Oftentimes, anti-hunting proponents in the KDWP like to use the word baiting when they discuss feeding deer. It sounds uglier, it ruffles more feathers among anti-hunters, and it makes the practice sound more like cheating for us as hunters. What is overlooked is the vast majority of hunters feed outside of the Kansas deer seasons and utilize supplemental feeding for animal health during harsh winter months and to properly grow and age their deer herd. Our 2 biggest months of sales at GB Feeds last year were July and August. Both months fall outside the Kansas deer seasons. Many times these herd managers aren't ever hunting near their feed sites. Banning supplemental feeding makes it difficult for herd managers to take deer inventory, properly aging bucks through their trail camera pictures. It also hinders their ability to invest in deer to grow bigger antlered bucks and ensure herd health for does and fawns. Next is the everyday hunter. Banning supplemental feeding will reduce hunter opportunities and success rates. How many of you have had a trail camera out and once your corn was gone, the deer pics disappeared? How many of you have a son or daughter that when you have an off day at work and you'd like to take your children out hunting, you want to have success and see deer? Supplemental feeding helps increase local hunter trail camera pictures, knowledge of the deer activity, and ultimately harvest rates. Many of us normal guys or gals will never own a piece of ground and have the ability to put in food plots or alter that property's landscape. Supplemental feeding spots are as close as we'll get to helping deer grow and increases our chances of harvesting one. Also, if the state bans supplemental feeding, all of those feeders that you own here in Kansas and have purchased with your money are completely worthless. How are you going to sell them and recoup any of your lost investment? How are you going to dispose of them if you can't sell them? Not to mention the change would impact Kansas companies that manufacture wild game feeders and employ local Kansas residents. To the outfitter, love them or hate them, there is no denying outfitters bring significant revenue dollars to the state of Kansas. Licenses, leases, food, hotels, gear, fuel, jobs, you name it, money is flowing to Kansas via outfitters. Are out-of-state hunters still going to jump at the chance to book a Kansas deer hunt when outfitters have limited intel on their deer and have limited success rates across the state of Kansas? Face it, outfitters market opportunity and success rates, and no one wants to spend a bunch of money and time and leave Kansas empty-handed. If success rates fall, the money slows down, and so does the lease payment to landowners, license sales, hotel rooms, meals at the local restaurant, and the jobs created by outfitters. To you as a landowner, recreational property values and hunting leases are at an all-time high right now in Kansas. It's a destination state to lease and purchase property for both in-state and out-of-state hunters due to the top-tier trophy potential and high hunter success rates, partially assisted by favorable supplemental feeding opportunities. Hunters can invest in their property right now, and their herd and the landowners are benefiting from it. Banning supplemental feeding could reduce trail camera pictures and harvest rates, thus negatively impacting landowners' ability to lease and or sell their property for the best price possible. To the game warden, you already don't have enough time in your day and are spread too thin to handle the current poaching and wildlife violations happening in Kansas. How are you going to police this? And when you don't, as a law-abiding hunter, how is it fair when the neighboring hunter is still feeding deer and I can't? Are you going to come walk their property and issue them citations? If so, is the citation enough to stop people from doing it? Is the state of Kansas prepared to increase the pay for you working more hours or hire more wardens to ensure compliance with this new law when the sales tax revenue is declining? In closing, if you're a Kansas resident like me, hunter or not, a deer herd manager, outfitter, landowner, business owner, or wildlife officer, I don't see how the state of Kansas can make such a major decision on non-definitive data to support this decision. Without concrete and definitive research showing that banning supplemental feeding is reducing CWD cases, banning supplemental feeding creates a massive negative financial impact on the state of Kansas. It reduces hunter success rates. It hinders the ability to grow larger bucks and healthier does. It reduces landowner lease payments and property values. It reduces client booking with outfitters, and it isn't policeable. If we can't prove that banning reduces CWD and benefits the deer population, who does banning supplemental feeding help? Well, it's the same people that want to take a little bit more control through an agenda that slowly strips away what you can and can't do on private property. So if you enjoy better success rates, you like to manage and grow bigger deer, and you want to protect the rights of private landowners in Kansas, I'd encourage you to share this video and voice your opinion at the upcoming KDWP meeting on August 17th in Pittsburgh, Kansas at 12 p.m. Central Standard Time. Thank you for watching, and good luck this season.